I've got tea. Does that make me a real YouTuber yet? Probably not. Anyway, so I know it's kind of an odd combination of ideas that I've got in my title there, but bear with me a moment. Fucked up my script. And yes, I do use a script for a lot of these because I'm cheap and a hoe. So, focusing. Looking at the romantic relationships in Game of Thrones, it seems like it would mostly paint a picture of what not to do. Do not, for example, marry a teenager or a sociopath, or a teenage sociopath if you can avoid it. There are very few genuinely healthy romances that have any kind of happiness in them in Westeros, it would seem. And most of the ones that do exist end in tragedy. Usually death of one or both parties, separation if you're lucky. Though who's really lucky in Westeros, let's be honest here. For warning, there are some small spoilers ahead, mostly in the earlier seasons, a little bit in the last season. I'll try to keep it vague. But if you're not caught up, I can't help you. Don't say I didn't warn you. So, what possible relationship advice could I be referencing here? Well, every relationship except the romantic ones is what I'm talking about. It seems to me that George R.R. Martin puts a lot more stress on platonic and familial relationships than on romantic ones with most of his characters. For example, Cersei Lannister and Catelyn Stark. For all their differences, they're both intensely motherly and they fiercely defend their children or fight to avenge them, whatever the case may be. Fathers are starkly contrasted with Ned Stark and Roose Bolton and their treatments of their bastard sons, whereas Ned Stark took Jon Snow in, raised him as basically another son, and let him play with his other children. Roose Bolton did not even acknowledge Ramsay's existence until his trueborn son died. And then when he did acknowledge his existence, he was still a bit of a dick. And then it doesn't even have to be any kind of blood relation. You look at the relationship between Davos and Shireen. They're not blood related, but Davos lost all of his children, and Shireen's dad he's not an asshole, he's just kind of, okay. He's just, at this point, he's kind of cold and distant, Shireen wants fatherly love, Davos wants a child again, and they both can give each other the kind of love they want in their lives. So it speaks to the fact that blood doesn't mean family, and family doesn't necessarily end in blood. And then, of course, you've got sibling relationships. This is best represented clearly by the intense loyalty between all of the Stark children and their desires to protect and avenge each other. Even with the half-brother Jon and their dad's ward Theon, there's still that kind of almost unconditional love. I say almost because, Theon. Like I said before, it doesn't have to be blood to be family. And this is encapsulated when you see Sansa and Jon reunite in this past season, because Sansa had kind of looked down on him her whole life, because, he's the bastard boy and whatnot, but he was the only family she had seen in ages, so of course she was as thrilled to see him as he was to see her. And when you see the Stark children's reactions to hearing about Theon's betrayal, it paints a very clear picture of the attitudes towards betraying your family, and how genuinely taboo that is, and for good reason. And then, of course, there's all the lovely friendships to consider. Brienne and Jaime go from hating each other to having a lot of respect and compassion for each other, and just respect and compassion keep your pervy shipping minds away from this beautiful friendship. And then Jon's friends, of course, become integral to his success, whereas Sansa's friends at King's Landing and in the Eyrie become integral to her survival. And even your more loner characters like Daenerys and Arya, they pick up friends along the way. And when you see how harshly Daenerys treats Jorah when she finds out that he was betraying her, The fact that she casts him out instantly just says very clearly right there, this is what happens when you betray your friends. This is not okay. And then Cersei is a really good example of what happens when you don't have any friends. Like, I would bet cash money that if she had one genuine friend, that shit that went down in the season finale wouldn't have happened, because there would have been someone there to be like, babe, this is at hand. And in my personal opinion, no discussion of friendship is complete without mentioning one of my personal faves, Sandor Clegane. And maybe I am a little bit biased towards the Hound since he is one of my faves, but I really think he embodies a very valuable element of friendship when you consider his relationships with Sansa and Arya. And I have a whole extensive theory about his motives and his morals, and I'll probably get into that in another video. But for now, I just want to talk about them. You know, in both of them, he kind of operated under what I think were false pretenses. You know, with Sansa, he said it was his job. With Arya, he said he wanted the ransom. But in both of these cases, he kind of went above and beyond. You know, with Sansa, it was his job to protect the king, not his job to go back for her during the riot or to ask him to come with her during Blackwater. With Arya, you could have expected him to just tie her up and sling her over the back of the saddle, but instead he taught her how to kill things, which doesn't seem like a smart thing to teach your prisoner, and he gave her her own horse, which is nice. So I really think there was some level of affection he had for these girls, whether it be friendship or maybe he's got kind of a paternal feeling towards them. Maybe he always wanted a daughter. He just wants a friend. I'll defend him to my grave. The Hound just wants a friend. I don't care how many people he's murdered. He wants friends. Moving on to something I'm a little less emotionally invested in, I want to touch on the effect that sex has on Martin's commentary on romantic and platonic relationships. Because more often than not, it seems that whenever two characters are having sex on the show or in the books, it means their relationship isn't very healthy. Except in the case of everyone's favorite slut, Oberyn Martell. And I say slut affectionately. Jaime and Cersei clearly have an unhealthy codependence thing going on. So that's one side of it. Then there's also the numerous times sex is used as manipulation or as a straight up weapon in the case of the numerous rapes that occur. And the rape culture in the books and in the show is a whole separate thing that I'll probably rant on later. But for now, let's just consider Sansa's two marriages. With Tyrion, she didn't really like him much. He didn't really like her very much. You know, it was for politics, just like her other marriage. But Tyrion had that respect for her boundaries. And when she said, I don't really want to do this, he was like, all right, this is what prostitutes are for. And then you take Ramsay, another marriage just for politics that Sansa didn't really want to be in, and he straight up rapes and abuses her. So, like, you know, they're kind of dramatically different examples, but the fact is that in here, sex was used to encapsulate the differences in these two marriages. You know, while both were more or less non-consensual, both for politics, Tyrion said, okay. Ramsay said, I don't even want to repeat what he said. So it seems more and more that when sex enters the equation, the relationship automatically goes south, which is a big part of the reason I don't want Brienne and Jaime to get together. They have this excellent friendship, and I feel like as soon as you put sex in the mix, it's all gonna go to shit. Speaking of, they both saw each other naked, they shared a bath, and it didn't get sexual, which just proves that nudity isn't inherently sexual, and I'm getting off topic now. I'll make another video about that later. All in all, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at the relationships these characters have, no happy, healthy romances jump to mind. But there are a lot of great and powerful friendships and strong family ties that do jump to mind, most of which I didn't even get to here, and I've been talking for near on 10 minutes now. And while I do not claim to know the inner workings of George R. R. Martin's mind, I like to think that with this fact, with this kind of theme, he's trying to establish that romantic relationships aren't everything, and that family ties and friendships can be just as, if not more important, than romantic partners. And I, for one, completely agree with that. But I'll leave your opinions up to you and end this now since I've talked for way too long.